Okay, today I want to make a video on commercial motor vehicle systems and parts. Okay, so when you first walk up to the truck, you will notice that the vehicle has quite a few components right out in front of us. These components are really critical. The components like the ID lights and clearance lights here, they're critical to let us know where the top of our vehicle is. Also, they identify the width of the vehicle. That's what the identification lights do. The clearance lights help you to know where the top of the vehicle is. Now on the trailer, they would be on the front of the trailer. But as you approach the vehicle, you would inspect them and you would say, now the way I would do this, I would do my ID lights, clearance lights, headlights, and signal lights all in one shot. And what I would do, I would say, as I approach the vehicle, all my lights, my ID, clearance, signals, which are down here on the sides, and headlights are all properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked. They're clean, proper color, and no signs of moisture. My ID lights and clearance lights, okay, ID, clearance lights, and signals are going to be amber in color. My headlights are clear in color. I would also look at my mirrors and brackets. So they are properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged or cracked. They're clean. I would look at my license plate. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged. It's not cracked. And the light works, and the light is clean and it is clear. Now with regard to my windshield is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. There are no obstructions. And the windshield itself is clean. The windshield wipers obviously are absolutely critical, especially in any kind of bad weather. They're properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked, not frayed. Blades have proper tension against the windshield. Moving on to the side of the truck. Now this is a windshield washer reservoir tube off of a Freightliner. This is one off of an International, but with regard to my windshield washer reservoir, I would want to make sure that it's properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. Fluid's at the proper level. All my hoses will be properly mounted and secured at both ends. They're not cracked, frayed, or leaking. It's critical that anything that's got fluid or gas running through it be not leaking, okay? Any kind of tank or reservoir has to be at the proper level. My alternator, which is right down here, this is an example. This properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, it's not cracked. It is belt driven, and the wires are attached to insulation. It's not cracked or frayed. And now with regard to this belt, the belt is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not frayed. The belt has the proper amount of tension, which is no more than 3/4 of an inch of play at the center of the belt. Alternators. Another thing about the alternator, so the alternator uses braided wire and magnets combined with rotary motion to transform that rotary motion into electricity. Now I don't know exactly how that happens, but I know that's what it does. Okay, so the alternator provides electricity for our vehicle, and we have quite a few systems on the vehicle that need electricity. Among those are the lights, the creature comfort fans, which would be our heater and defroster fans. They require electricity as well. And I'm sure there's quite a few other things on a vehicle that would require electricity also. So it's very important. Actually we need electricity to start the vehicle. Now, electricity to start the vehicle comes from the batteries, but the alternator keeps the batteries charged. Now, I am not sure. Now, this image here, this looks like two alternators sitting here. Now, I can't say for sure that that's what this is, but that's what it looks like. Some trucks have a 24-volt system. That may be what we are seeing here. I can't say for sure. Okay. Moving on. So as we approach the driver's side of the truck, now this truck, the engine in this truck is a DD15, okay, Detroit diesel. Now this is the coolant reservoir. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not leaking. The coolant is where we add. The coolant reservoir is where we add coolant to the vehicle. Now, coolant is a special material that circulates throughout the engine and cools the engine. Okay? Now, how this works is coolant is stored in the radiator and the reservoir. The water pump pumps coolant throughout the engine, and the coolant picks up the heat off the engine and takes it back to the radiator, and then the radiator, it's circulated through the radiator, and there are fins all up and down the radiator, and as air blows through there, that heat is dissipated or taken off of the liquid, if you will, and then the liquid circulates back through the engine. And that's how the engine is cooled. Well, that's one of the ways that the engine is cooled. This is the water pump. Now the water pump, this is your water pump, this would be your thermostat. Now your water pump is what circulates the coolant throughout the engine. Now the water pump is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, it's not cracked. It is belt driven, okay? And it's not leaking. Now to check our engine oil, now engine oil is another thing that is critical, okay? Engine oil also helps to keep the engine cool. That's one of the things the CDL manual says that's kind of funky, but it's true. Engine helps to cool the engine oil helps to cool the engine as well as lubricating it. Okay, you wouldn't really think of engine oil as being a coolant, but it does work to cool the engine also. Now, it reduces friction also. Now, this is the dipstick. Now to check the engine oil, we pull the dipstick out, we would wipe it off, stick it back in, then pull it back out. We check the level like this guy's doing right here. If it's below the operating level for the engine, then we would need to add oil. We would add oil through the engine oil fill tube. Okay. Now, this is an air compressor and power steering pump combo here. You can't really see it in this picture because it's over in this area. So now with the air compressor creates, or not creates, but compresses the air that the brake system uses and that the suspension system uses. So the air pressure that's in the tanks comes from this guy, okay? Now this is a gear-driven unit, all right? Now this is my understanding of this. This is the power steering pump and the air compressor all in one. Okay, I have let's see, the way this looks on the DD15 user manual, technician's manual, it shows that those two parts are actual. That shows that this diagram is two separate parts. One's the air compressor and the other is the power steering pump. Okay, so what you got here is the power steering pump and the air compressor all in one unit. Now, with that said, the power steering pump works our power steering. So if we didn't have our power steering pump, steering would be very difficult at slow speeds. Now, back in the day, none of the trucks had power steering on them. But, you know, we've gotten weak over the years with the addition of power steering, which makes life really nice, you know. But so the air compressor pumps creates air that's stored in the tanks, and the power steering fluid, the power steering pump circulates the power steering fluid through the system, through the gearbox and all that. And that's what assists us in turning the wheel and turning all of that weight on the axle. Okay, so that will be over in this area somewhere. Okay, can't really see it here as far as I can tell. So with our power steering pump and our air compressor, they have to be properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, they're not cracked, they're not leaking. Now, you can see that this unit is gear driven. Okay, so that big gear right there, it's gear driven. Okay, now this is our power steering fluid reservoir, and just like all the other tanks or reservoirs on the vehicle, it's going to have to be properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked, not leaking, fluids at the proper level. Now, this is a power steering hose coming off of that. They are properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked, not leaking, and they're properly mounted and secured at both ends. Now, this is the steering shaft, which is part of the steering linkage. Now, this is it right here, and a U-joint from the steering shaft. Now, the steering gearbox. See the hoses going into the steering gearbox? Steering gearbox is what turns the rotary motion of the steering wheel into this linear motion that pulls the pitman arm, or the tire, or the this is the pitman arm, this is the drag link. Okay, so with that said, the steering gearbox is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. The steering linkage, steering shaft, U-joints, pitman arm, drag link, and then the tie rod, which ties the wheels together, are all properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked, not worn, not loose. They're not missing any nuts, bolts, or castle nuts. Okay, now with suspension, this is a common suspension system that you will see on the front of a lot of tractors. Okay, you have your front and rear spring mounts properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked. You have your spring leaves, which are here, properly mounted and secured, not cracked, shifted, or missing. U-bolts, properly mounted and secured to the axle, not damaged, not cracked. And then we have our hydraulic shock absorber, which is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. The brake system, brake hose, which is properly mounted and secured at both ends. It's not damaged, cracked, frayed, or leaking. My brake chamber is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, and it is not leaking. The push rod, which is right here, is properly mounted and secured. It is not damaged, not cracked. It is, and it has no more than 1 inch of play with the brakes released. So when you pull on the slack adjuster with a glove with the brakes released, the push rod should have no more than 1 inch of play. So which means it shouldn't leave the chamber more than 1 inch. Now the slack adjuster is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not worn, not loose. It's not missing any clevis pins or cotter keys. Now the brake drum is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, and it's free of oil. The brake linings, which are inside the drum, properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked, not worn, dangerously thin. They're at least a 1/4 inch thick. So less than the 1/4 inch would be dangerously thin. And of course there's no oil on them. Now, the brake lining is the material that creates friction which stops the vehicle. Okay, years ago this stuff was made out of asbestos, and for obvious reasons that was not a good thing. Now my tires, properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked. So inner and outer sidewalls are properly mounted and secured, are not damaged, not cracked. There are no cuts, bubbles, or abrasions. The tread is evenly worn. Minimum tread depth is at least 2/32 of an inch in every major groove. The rim is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not. There are no signs of illegal weld repairs. The valve stem and cap is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. I would check my air pressure with a tire gauge through the valve stem and cap, which is right here. The lug nuts, properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked. There are no signs of rust trails that could indicate looseness and no shiny threads. My hub oil seal, which is right in the middle of the rim, it's also here. Properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not leaking. Fluid's at the proper level. Okay. Oh, this tire cannot be recapped. Steer tires cannot be recapped. Driver's side, moving back toward the door. This marker light's properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It is clean and amber in color. Also, there are no signs of moisture. My IFTA sticker is in place and up to date. My door opens, closes properly, and latches securely. It is not damaged and is properly mounted. My weather seal on both sides is properly mounted and secured. It's not cracked or frayed or damaged in any way. My battery box, properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. There are no signs of foul odor, and it's properly secured. There are no indications that battery acid might be leaking. My step is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, and it can support my weight. The DEF tank has diesel exhaust fluid in it. This is critical for the engine to run correctly when we have diesel exhaust system on the vehicle. Now, a diesel particulate filter system. All right. Now, it has to have DEF in it. You cannot put coolant in this. I've heard some drivers say some stupid things about the DEF system. If you put anything other than DEF in that tank, you're going to destroy your truck's diesel particulate system. Okay? So let's not do that. DEF goes in this. This tank is properly mounted and secure. It's not cracked. It is not broken. It is not leaking. The cap is secure, and it is connected with a tab or a chain. My fuel tank is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. My cap is properly mounted with a chain. It has a chain. Chain is intact. It is properly mounted. It is tight. It is not leaking. My bands on my fuel tank, properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked. and there are rubber strips in between the tank and the metal straps that make sure that there's no metal on metal contact between the steel strap and the aluminum tank. If there were metal on metal contact between the steel strap and the aluminum tank, it would rub a hole in the tank. My catwalk is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It is free of debris. My drive shaft, properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not bent. The U-joints are properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked or bent. The tractor frame, properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. Has no illegal weld repairs. My lines. My service line, which is blue, and my red emergency line are properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked. They are not frayed, not leaking. They are properly connected to the trailer with glad hands. The glad hands, the grommets, are in good shape. They're not cracked or dry rotted, and they're not leaking. The electrical line, the green electrical line, is properly mounted and secured. It's connected at both ends. It is plugged into the trailer electrical box, and the cap on the box is secure, and the spring is in place, and there is a good connection between my electrical line on the tractor and on the trailer. My splash guard, which is right in front of my drive tires, is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, it's not cracked. My header board on my trailer is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It can hold the load. My inspection sticker on the front of my trailer is present and up to date. My clearance lights up top, properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked. There are no signs of moisture, and they are the proper color, amber. My electrical box, as I said before, on the front of the trailer is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked. The electrical box flap, the door on the electrical box, is spring loaded so that it keeps the plug in the box when the plug is plugged in. Now, my suspension on my drive tires. All right, now this is a control arm. Okay, let's see. So if you inspect your drive tire suspension like a typical front rear spring mount, that's okay, but this is a control arm. Okay, the manual calls this a control arm right here. Okay, so we would have a bracket and a control arm, and basically what I'm going to tell you, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to inspect it both ways. However your instructor has you inspect it the way they want you to inspect it. Okay, but I will tell you both ways. All right, and they can figure it out from there. All right, so my bracket is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. There's not missing any bolts. My control arm is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not bent. My airbag mount is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, it's not cracked, not missing any bolts. My airbag is not cracked, frayed, or leaking. It is properly mounted and secured. Now, if they have you inspect this as a leaf spring type setup, and that's okay, then you would check it the same way you did the front. Okay, the only difference is the airbags. So you would say my front and rear spring mounts are properly mounted and secured, are not damaged, not cracked. The leaf springs are properly mounted and secure. They are not cracked, shifted, or missing. And the hydraulic shock absorber is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, cracked, or leaking. The bushings are in good shape. They're not cracked or dry rotted. Okay, the brake system. Now the brake hose, which you can see in this picture, is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, and it is not leaking. Brake chamber, properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. Push rods, properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked. Has no more than 1 inch of play with the brakes released. The slack adjuster is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, and it is not worn or loose and has no missing clevis pins or cotter keys. The brake lining is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It is the material, the lining is not worn dangerously thin. The hub is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, and it is free of oil. The hydraulic shock absorber is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. And this is your airbag setup with your control arm setup also. So if you had your airbag over here, you would say it's I already said it on the other picture, but that's okay. The airbag mount's properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. The airbag is not cracked, dry rotted. It's not. The airbag is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, not frayed, not leaking. All right, so this would be a control arm bracket, or you could call it a leaf spring mount. It's not really a leaf spring mount. It's a control arm bracket, but however they have you inspect it, that's fine. All right, but the control arm bracket's properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked, not missing any bolts. And the control arm's properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked, not bent. Okay. Tires, inner and outer sidewalls are properly mounted and secure. They're not damaged, not cracked. There are no bubbles, abrasions, or cuts. The tread is evenly worn, and the tread depth is no less than 2/32 of an inch on these tires. These tires can be recapped. There's no debris in between the tires, and the bud spacer is in good shape. The rim is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked, no illegal welds. The valve stem is properly mounted and secure. The cap is present. I would check the air pressure in the tire through the valve stem. Okay. The lug nuts are properly mounted and secure. They're not damaged, not cracked, no shiny threads. They have no rust trails that could indicate looseness. Now the hub axle seal, which is different from the hub oil seal in that the hub axle seal, the oil can't be checked in it by the driver while standing on the ground. So we're not going to check it for proper level. What we're going to check it for is to make sure that it is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, it's not cracked, and it's not leaking. Now, all of that is for the tires. That's for the first set. Now with this second set, I would inspect this set of tires the same way I inspected this set of tires. Okay. The fifth wheel. Now, the apron or upper fifth wheel is properly mounted and secured to the bottom of the trailer. It's not damaged, it's not cracked. The skid plate is properly mounted and secured to the platform. It is not damaged, not cracked. There are no missing pins. It is properly lubricated. There's no space or no gap between the fifth wheel, between the skid plate and the apron. The release arm is in the fully engaged position. It is not damaged. It's not cracked, and the latch is in place. The kingpin is properly mounted to the apron. It's not damaged, not cracked. And the locking jaws are securely enclosed around the kingpin. The fifth wheel will also slide. This one has a slide. Okay, so it has some adjustability with it to where the driver can slide it forward or backward. Now this is to help you with the weights. You can move some weights within limitation. If you get heavy on the drives and you need to move a few hundred pounds, you can do that within the limits, within reason, with the by sliding the fifth wheel. Additionally, the fifth wheel slide is there to get the tractor farther away from the landing gear. All right, there are certain trailers that will that are so close to the tractor that the tractor may swipe the landing gear or the front of the trailer if it hangs low behind the tractor. Now, we need to make sure that the fifth wheel slide is in the proper position so that the back of the tractor can clear the landing gear during turns. This will rip your mud flaps off if it's not in the correct position, okay? You need to make sure that the pins are in the lock position. Okay. Now, my mud flap is in good condition. It's properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged. It's not cracked. The DOT tape is present. The reflector is present on the mud flap. It's in good condition. It's clean. My lights, my tail lights, my reverse light is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged. It's not cracked. There are no signs of moisture. It is clear. My tail lights, my brake lights are properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked. There are no signs of moisture, and they are clean. All three of those lights, all the lights are clean and proper color. My brake lights, which also function as my signals and four-ways, would also be red in color, and the reverse light would be clear, as is seen in the picture here. The side of the trailer is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, and there are no holes or missing rivets, and it can hold the load. The DOT reflective tape, that stuff is crazy expensive, by the way. DOT reflective tape covers at least 80% of the trailer, the side of the trailer. The landing gear frame, pads, and crank handle. The landing gear properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. The landing gear is in a fully raised position, and the landing gear works in both high and low range. The crank handle is securely stowed. The marker light on the side of the trailer, this is a signal light on the side of the trailer. It is properly mounted and secured. It is not damaged, not cracked. There are no signs of moisture, and the light itself is amber in color, which is the proper color for that light. The air lines are properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, they're not cracked, not frayed, not leaking. They're at least 18 inches off the ground. The tandem release arm and pins are properly mounted and secure. They are not damaged, not cracked. They're in the fully engaged position. They're not bent. And now the torque arm is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not bent. The leaf springs, hangers, or spring mounts, front and rear, properly mounted and secured, not damaged, not cracked. The leaf springs or spring leaves are properly mounted and secure. They're not cracked, shifted, or missing. The U-bolts are properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged or cracked. They're mounted to the axle. The brakes. So the brake hoses are properly mounted and secured. They're not damaged, not cracked, not shifted. They're not damaged, not cracked, not leaking, not frayed. The brake chamber, which you can see in this image, is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, or leaking. The push rod is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked, has no more than 1 inch of play with the brakes released. The slack adjuster is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not worn. It's not loose. It's not missing any clevis pins or cotter keys. The brake lining is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked. It is not worn dangerously thin. It's free of oil. The brake drum is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged. It's not cracked. It's free of oil. Now the trailer equalizer, which is a bar that comes out here, okay, it is not damaged, not cracked, not bent. Now the tires, the trailer tires, inner and outer sidewalls are properly mounted and secure. They're not damaged, not cracked. There are no cuts, bubbles, or abrasions. And the tread is worn evenly. Minimum tread depth is 2/32 of an inch on these tires. They can be recapped. The rim is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked, no signs of welding repairs. My lug nuts are properly mounted and secure. They're not damaged, not cracked. There is no shiny threads and no rust trails that could indicate looseness. The hub oil seal is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's not leaking. If I could check the level in it, I would make sure that it's at the proper level. The valve stem and cap are in place, not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. I would check this set of tires the same way I checked this set of tires. Mud flaps are intact. They're securely mounted, not damaged, not cracked. The back of the trailer, clearance lights and brake lights and signals are all properly mounted and secure, not damaged, not cracked, no signs of moisture. They are a proper color red. I have an ABS right there, ABS light on the side of the trailer also. It is proper color amber. It's not damaged, not cracked. It's clean. Like my other lights back here, they're clean as well. The ABS light is amber and it is securely mounted, properly mounted and clean and functional. The door goes up, opens, closes, latches securely. It's not missing any latches, hinges, or anything. And it functions properly. The weather seal on the door, which would be at the bottom, is intact. It's not cracked, frayed, or leaking. It's not cracked, frayed, or damaged in any way. The ICC bumper, properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged. It's not cracked. The reflective tape goes across the whole back of the 100% of the truck at the back. I would inspect this side of the trailer exactly the same way I did the driver's side. Except I would check the exhaust on this side. The exhaust is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. There are no loose pipes, clamps, or fittings. No black soot at the joints. There are no indication of leaking. and there are no leaks. This is critical with the exhaust system because the exhaust is toxic. Okay, we cannot have leaking exhaust, especially if it were to leak up into the cab. It could potentially kill you. Okay, entering the cab of the tractor. As I enter the cab, I'm going to use 3 points of contact entering the cab. When I get up in the cab, I'm going to check my seat belt and make sure that my seat belt is properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked, not frayed. It latches and unlatches and latches securely as well. I'm going to check my fire extinguisher, my spare bulbs, my fuses. I want to make sure my fire extinguisher is properly and securely mounted. It's not damaged, not cracked, not leaking. It is also fully charged and properly rated. I want to check my lights, my indicators, my four-ways, my left turn signal, right turn signal. I want to check my high beam indicator. I also want to move to the next slide. I want to make sure that I have my emergency equipment. I have 3 reflective red triangles that are securely mounted in the truck and present. I have spare bulbs and I have fuses, spare fuses, if my vehicle doesn't have circuit breakers. Okay, most of the time you'll find out that the electrical box has a combination of fuses and circuit breakers. Okay, so you should probably have fuses with you all the time, if you do have fuses, that is, definitely. Fire extinguisher, as I said before, is properly mounted, securely mounted. It's not damaged, not cracked. It is properly charged, and it is fully charged and properly rated. My door mirrors, properly mounted and secure. They're clean. They are adjusted correctly. My door window controls. My window goes up and down. It's working functionally. It's properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked, and it is clean. My windshield is properly mounted and secured. It's not damaged, not cracked. It has no obstructions. My steering wheel, properly mounted and secure. It's not damaged, not cracked. Has no more than 2 inches of play in the steering wheel. 2 inches of play. Okay, no more than 2 inches of play. I'm gonna do a safe start. I'm going to, now when you start the vehicle, the starter, okay, which uses electricity to make this, I believe this is called a Bendix, jump out and engage the flywheel. Then the starter, which is an electric motor that runs on direct current, DC, what the alternator produces, okay? The energy that the starter uses to start the vehicle is stored in the batteries. So when you turn the starter key switch, the Bendix jumps out, grabs the flywheel, engages with it, then the starter spins with great power and at a high speed to jump start the cycle of the engine running. And with a diesel engine, particularly, the diesel doesn't run on spark plugs, okay? A diesel engine runs on compression. So diesels somehow use compression to compress the fuel-air mixture, and that causes the mixture to explode inside the cylinder, and that's what gives you your power, okay? With your gasoline-powered car, you have spark plugs that ignite the fuel-air mixture with electricity. Okay. All right. now that my engine is running, my vehicle's in neutral, obviously. I'm going to check my air horn, which is pulled by this cable up here, and my city horn, which is on the middle of the steering wheel normally. Okay, this is an example of a city horn. This is an example of an air horn. They both work. Now, my steering wheel, like I said, it has no more than 2 inches of play at the top of a 20-inch wheel. My wipers and washers are working correctly. Wipers have proper tension against the windshield. Okay, so when I say my wipers and washers are working, I mean that my wipers are making contact with the windshield all the way across. They're cleaning the windshield off, and that the washers are spraying washer fluid up onto the windshield. Wipers and washers are working correctly. Additionally, the ABS light, when I do the safe start, the ABS light should come on and go off, indicating that the ABS system is working properly. If the ABS light stays on, it's a dead giveaway that there's something wrong with the ABS system. Now I'm going to go through, my truck is running, so I'm going to go through and check my gauges. My oil pressure, just a few moments after startup, should be between 5 and 20 psi. Now, the oil pressure, each truck is a little bit different, okay, as far as what the pressures should run. But shortly after startup, it should be between 5 and 20 psi. Now, that's at idle, okay. Now, when you're driving on the road, your oil pressure will be higher. When you have the throttle pressed, the RPMs are up, the oil pressure will be higher. So you should know what the oil pressure for your manufacturer's, for your vehicle calls for. They're all a little bit different. Now the water temperature, which is also the coolant temperature, is beginning to rise to normal range. You should know what that is for your vehicle also. Now the fuel gauge, I have fuel gauge is working, and the DEF tank, which is represented by these 4 green lights, so the reason it has 4 green lights, each one of those little green lights represents a tank of fuel. Okay, so there's enough fuel in your DEF tank for 4 tanks, okay, for 4 fill-ups, if that makes sense. So once you get down around 1 block, you should get more DEF, okay. Your primary and your secondary air pressure gauges are rising to the cutout range of about 125 psi. So they're rising to normal range as well. The RPM gauge is at 600 RPMs, shows that my RPMs are working, the RPM gauge is working correctly. The multifunction display, LCD display in the center of the console cluster here's a little blow up of it. It's showing 12.6 volts. The alternator should be showing between 12 and 14 volts for a 12 volt system. Okay. My heater and my defroster are working correctly. Can't go anywhere without those. I'm going to check for my insurance card and my registration, my truck and trailer registration. Want to make sure that I have those documents as well. They could be in the glove box in the center of the truck above the driver's head. They may be in the glove box on the passenger side, or they could be in the door in a book in the door, okay? but make sure you have this information. Additionally, make sure you have your driver's license, your medical card, and your, let's see, driver's license, medical card. Nah, we got it all. Driver's license, medical card, proof of insurance, registration for your truck and your trailer. Okay, you have to make sure you have all of that information with you. Okay, now, going to put the truck in first gear, then I'm going to turn the switch to the off position. At that point, I'm going to turn the switch back to the on position or the run position, not with the engine running though. I'm just turning the engine back on to supply power to my air pressure gauges and my warning devices. Okay. Now I'm going to do my air leak test. First, I'm going to push in both valves. I'm going to allow the air pressure to stabilize. After the air pressure stabilizes, now the air pressure stabilizes, I'm going to say I'm going to apply my foot to the service brake after initial air loss. This combination vehicle or a straight truck. Now the straight truck should not lose more than 3 psi in 1 minute, and the combination vehicle or tractor trailer should not lose more than 4 psi in 1 minute. Okay, so that accomplished. Count for, I actually have my watch on. I'm timing it for a whole minute. So pass the air leak test. Now I'm going to fan my brakes down. I'm going to fan the brake pedal until the pressure reaches around 60 psi, but no lower than 55 psi. At that point, my warning lights and buzzer should activate. Now, those are my low air pressure warning devices, so I fan them down. Every time you press and release that brake pedal, it's going to let air out of the system. So warning light and buzzer came on, so they're functioning. I'm going to continue to fan the brakes down until my air pressure gets between 20 and 40 or 20 and 45. At that point, my tractor protection valve should activate. Now at that point, both dash valves, the red and the yellow, should pop out when the air pressure gets that low. The tractor protection valve. It protects the tractor by keeping air inside the tractor if the trailer were to break away. So I fan them down, pressure gets down around 40, pop, pop, both brakes pop out. Now at this point, I'm going to ask the examiner if I can build my air pressure back up, and the air pressure should build up to within, should build up from 80 to 100 within 45 seconds. Okay, now I'm going to do my safe start. Going to build my air pressure up, and it should build up in that amount of time. The vehicle has to be in neutral, obviously, to do a safe start. So my safe start was completed. I built my air pressure up. Now I'm going to continue to build it up until the governor cuts out. Now the governor cuts out at around 120, around 125-ish. Okay, so my air pressure is built up to the governor cutout. Now at this point, what I'm going to do, I'm going to push in the yellow valve, and I am going to tug against the trailer brake. So I'm going to test the trailer parking brake. So I push in the yellow valve, put it in first gear, let off the clutch a little bit, I feel the tug. Okay, trailer parking brake's working. Now I'm going to push the trailer brake in, which is the red valve, and test the tractor brake. So I put it in first gear, and then I feel the tug. So now I'm going to pull that valve back out. Okay, so that's working. Now with that said, now I need to test my service brake. Now I'm going to drive the vehicle ahead 5 miles per hour, apply the foot pedal or the service brake. The wheel should not pull to one side or the other. Now this is not lean to one side or the other, it is pulling. Okay, we're checking to make sure that the steering is not pulling to one side or the other as we're braking. I drove professionally for 20 years. I saw this one time on a vehicle, but it does happen, so you should check for it. Depending on the situation, it could be very, very dangerous. Okay, so check and make sure that your service brake is working correctly. Now that that's said and done, there is another test that you should do, but it's not part of your pre-trip inspection typically, and that's going to be to test your trailer service brakes. Now how you would do that, you would press, you would have both valves pushed in, then you would apply the trolley valve, which is right here. It's that little lever right there. You'd pull it toward you, and then you will pull against it. And then if the vehicle moves, then your trailer service brake are out of adjustment, or they're not working correctly. Okay. So